I think it's time for us to take a good look in the mirror, the left, the right, as American citizens, and honestly have a good, hard, mature conversation with ourselves, with each other, and bridge the gap. How are we going to move forward? What are we going to, how are we going to approach these issues in a mature, thoughtful, conversational manner? Because if you take any issue, doesn't matter what it is, let's take the border crisis, for example. Are we going to continue to approach things idealistically, how we want them to be, how we think the world should operate, which doesn't seem to be working? Or do we want to take a mature look at this, or a new look at this, and reframe it like, okay, we would like it to be this way, but currently it's not. We cannot have a country, or any country, with open borders. That doesn't even make rational sense. Yeah, who doesn't want to see themselves as compassionate? We are a country built on immigration, after all. But if we were a country built on legal immigration, where people were vetted, they did it the right way, through the protocols, the proper channels. And we were able to see how these people could contribute to society, assimilate with us, and help us grow into something that even more profoundly strong and united. And I mean, no one would have even dreamed of saying a few years ago, when we were experiencing the pandemic, it would be a great idea if we just allow people over the border that we have no idea if they have COVID or not. But for some reason, we want to turn a blind eye to, well, what about the fentanyl crisis? Do we think that helps? Fentanyl crisis? Do we believe that it helps with crime when we don't know who's coming in? Do we believe it helps? We know what the intentions are from some factions of other countries, terrorist organizations. We know what their intentions are. Are we to be naive to believe that they're not going to cross over the border and try to harm us? Why do we continue to make decisions out of compassion when we know that it's really naive? Why are we all being collectively gullible? Can't we have a mature conversation? Which brings me to my next point. Education. It used to be in this country that we were educated, we consider ourselves educated because we asked great questions. We taught each other to exchange ideas because that's the way that great ideas were found. How do we innovate? How do we break through and solve problems if we cannot first communicate what is actually happening without judgment, so that we can exchange ideas and different perspectives? You bring your expertise to the table, I bring my expertise to the table. You bring your observations to the table, I bring my observation to the table. Neither is necessarily has to be right. They might be right in this context. And I'm not going to judge you or call you names or insult you or assume that you're part of this group or that group, or that you're bigoted or judgmental. I'm merely trying to understand your point of view so that I can learn something. To actually listen. That's what we're lacking. We are lacking. We talk about compassion and empathy all the time, but in reality, no one's listening. We're not listening for the best ideas. What we want to do is we want to make sure our ideologies are correct and popular and trendy. We want to live in a fantasy world when in actuality, we're being harmed by that very approach. What we need to be doing is bridging the gap. Let's have conversations, honest conversations without judgment. Let's look at education and say, hey, wait a second, what are we getting on this return on investment? We always talk about, the politicians go around talking all the time about how important it is that we fund our educational system. More money, more money, more money. Well, in truth, a lot of school systems in this country are highly funded. But what is the return on that investment? I live in Baltimore City. What is the return on the investment of all the funds that are sent to Baltimore City? Federal funds, for that matter, that are sent to Baltimore City. Well, I'll give you a nice statistic this year alone. 23 schools, out of 23 schools in Baltimore City, which I believe is 91% of the total. Don't quote me on that. How many students do you believe were proficient in math? I'm not talking about percentages. I'm not talking 10% or 20%, which would be rather pathetic, if we're being honest, and unacceptable. The exact answer is 0. Not percent, 0 students total. If you guess 0, you'd be correct. 0 students out of 23 public schools were labeled as proficient in mathematics. Do you think that's true for Japan? Do you think that's true for China, who are competing against us? Do you think that's true for any of the innovative upcoming societies? But we don't seem to care. We seem to be distracted. We seem to like the idea of being compassionate and educated and inclusive. But in reality, are we? Are we inclusive with our ideas? Are we great at listening, at understanding different people's perspectives without judgment? I don't think we are. And I think that's what we need to work on. Just like we will work on independent relationships, we need to work on our relationship with each other as citizens.